Good morning, good evening, or good night, all depending on when you are watching this video. So for today's presentation, I will be discussing universities and essentially answering the question of where did they come from? So to start, we will begin in the Middle Ages, which is essentially when universities really began to blossom. Maybe they weren't exactly called universities at this time, but this is where it really grew from. So schools were really referred to as studia generalia because students could go and really just learn from masters, and mainly because the original purpose of schools was to train men to be priests and monks, which is why the students were often referred to as clerics, meaning that women actually couldn't go to these schools because women couldn't be clerics. And you see, these schools really began to grow into something because of foreigners that began to go join the groups. And these masters or teachers, they taught in Latin, and so this really was helpful because students could go from city to city and still learn from different teachers, all because they were teaching in the same language. And so to continue on here with the Middle Ages, this is really what kind of sparked this liberal arts courses. And so the people of the Middle Ages believed that there was a certain amount of secular knowledge that needed to be studied so that the clerics could better understand, like ancient writings. And so one of the first things that was studied was the trivium. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that word, and so that was basically just, three things, which was grammar, rhetoric, and logic. And so originally, the men would study and learn this, and then they could go off into a school of their choice. So they could go into a school that specialized in a specific area, such as Paris, which was theology, Montpellier, medicine, and Bologna, which was law. Although the men didn't really have to go into that, but that's what most people did. However, you could continue to study and go into the quadrivium, which was your arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And this is something that people just kind of did because they wanted to just learn more. You didn't really get a job out of it like you did if you were to go to one of the schools that really specialize in a specific area, because those are the schools that really began to train you for a job. And just to add to the quadrivium, the arithmetic and astronomy were taught so that the people would be able to find Easter. And I thought that was really interesting just because it goes to show that even though they're teaching these secular courses, it really all essentially leads back to religion. And so moving forward, we're just going to look at the word university and essentially where it comes from. So the word university is a Latin word. It comes from the word universitas, which means a corporation or a guild. And so here we have our earliest university. So the earliest university was a medical school that was in Italy, and the first true university was found in Bologna. The university in Paris and the University of Oxford are ones that specifically stood out to me just because these are the ones that I feel really had an impact and have an impact on the way that universities are today. Essentially, with it being that residence halls were one of the first things that the University of Paris and Oxford implemented. And I find that really cool just because, I live in a dorm, and it just goes to show just like what an impact, history can have. And it just like the University of Paris and Oxford, they really just set that precedent. And another interesting thing is the fact that loans were actually first established here in England. And so money was placed in a chest, and the students that needed the money could leave an item that was worth more than the loan. And in order to get that item back, the student needed to actually pay off that debt. However, if the student was unable to repay that debt, the item that they put in the chest would be auctioned off later on. In addition to this, Pope Gregory the Ninth discovered or founded the University of Toulouse, and this was the first university that was founded by a papal decree. And here we go on to more just early universities, and just the fact that that they can be viewed as corporations. And in order to be a real university, you really needed to receive a charter. So you could get these charters from an emperor, a king, or a pope, and just basically saying yes, this is a real school. And so one big thing though is that they did not want anyone teaching atheism, and the schools, in order to be independent and choose essentially what they wanted to do, they needed to be able to finance themselves. Moving on to degrees. So degrees weren't really as significant at first. It only really meant that you could teach. So you didn't really have much options. However, in order to give out degrees, schools needed to have a license or that charter from the Pope or King or Emperor. So here we have Peter Abelard, which he was a famous student and teacher. And one thing about him is that he constantly debated with his teacher, William, in Paris, and they really just kind of butt heads a lot. And so William, his teacher, actually ended up kicking him out because he just didn't want him part of his class anymore. But something significant about Peter here is the fact that he lectured on scriptures, and he interpreted these scriptures, and he didn't just teach the Psalms or the New Testament like most other masters did. He actually taught the whole Bible, and he also wrote a textbook for his students, which is Sic et Non, or translated into English, Yes and No. One of the things that really hurt him was this Council of Soissons. Once again, I apologize for butchering that word. However, this really affected him because he wrote a book about the Trinity, but the council ended up condemning his book, and they made him tear it page by page and throw it into the fire. And this really just kind of upset him because he was really passionate about his work. And here we move on to German universities. So one of the first universities that was discovered by Germans was the University of Prague, and this was really founded by Charles the Fourth. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out here. And teachers and students, they solved the same problems, and something that really I felt was important to address was that seminars and laboratories were something that was kind of discovered here. And this is where you study problems in a specific field, and we see these a lot today, especially in science courses. Almost all science courses that you take, biology, chemistry, there's a lab to it. And so that just goes to show you once again just the effect that these early universities have on the universities we attend today. And as I said, the impact on American universities. And so going into the first universities in the Americas, I really just wanted to address this because I actually did not know that the first universities were in more of the South America, Central America area. And so it really just begins with this Universidad Autónoma de Santo Domingo. And so it really just had like these 4 schools. Even though that was the first like real like university to open here, some people actually really didn't consider it the first one because this university actually opened and closed and opened and closed. So people kind of look at the National University of San Marcos as like the official, real first university just because it hasn't closed like the one in 1538. And the other one is the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Mexico, which was established by Emperor Charles V and signed and like agreed upon by Prince Philip III. And so lastly, we're just kind of moving into the universities in North America because I just thought that that was something that just needed to be addressed and just shown that one of the first universities, the first university established in North America was Harvard. And so this was established on Puritan beliefs, and they did believe that a liberal education was essential. And so this university was really modeled after the universities in Europe, and they took courses like philosophy, classical language, literature, etc. And originally, Henry Dunster, he was the first president of Harvard. He established a 3-year course study, but eventually he changed it to 4 years. And so that's essentially what goes on today in universities. We have a degree plan that has us here for 4 years. And so that was something that was really interesting to me. And so moving on, we also have Yale as as the second university. Yale really, when they were opening Yale, they really looked to Harvard, for guidance. And most of the teachers were actually Harvard graduates, and they as well just focus on like liberal arts and languages. And so it's just really interesting to see where our universities came from and the fact that it all began because we wanted to teach and make sure that preachers and monks were prepared to spread that gospel, but then how it just like changed to where it wasn't just all about religion, but the fact that you needed to have a real well-rounded education in order to be successful and in order to interpret and understand the Bible even more clearly. Even though today, in some schools, reading the Bible and incorporating scripture isn't as relevant anymore, those early beginning universities in Europe, Germany, really has impacted the way universities are ran today. And so here I just have my bibliography, and thank you for listening.